To talk about shamanism, we probably need to understand first one of the basic principles of all different indigenous wisdoms. From a shamanic perspective, life is an interconnected web of consciousness. There is no separation in between the animals, in between the earth, in between human beings. We are all one. From this space, the shaman or the healer is able to journey inwards into the realm of no separation and communicate to the animals, communicate to the plants, find out the medicinal properties that different plants have, or maybe even realize that the combination of different roots and vines can create a brew with psychotropic and healing effects. For the shaman, the real reality is the inner reality, is the place within themselves where spirit lives, is the spiritual reality, the one that's the center of their society and belief system, and not the other way around. Whatever they create in the outside world, whatever they meet in the outside world, they know it to be a representation and a mirror of that what's going on in the spirit world. Today, in transpersonal psychology, we understand these realms to be the unconscious realms, the collective unconscious, that is space that it's again a web of consciousness where there is no separation, where we can touch that collective matrix of life that we are all part of and where we all come from. And transpersonal psychology takes into consideration the spiritual dimension of the person. And this is the big difference with other approaches. In the transpersonal vision, there is no exclusion of one approach or a different approach. There is the inclusion of all different ways of perceiving reality. So the transpersonal vision today would bring together all the different schools of thought that have existed in psychiatry and in psychology, and will bring them together, embracing that each one of those approaches has a piece of reality. And if we're able to look into all of them and bring them together, well, we'll probably have a much more clearer picture of what the human psyche or the human being is. In order to do that, we have to include the shamanic belief system. Shamanism is the most ancient wisdom that we have today, in which there is a very structured spiritual way of living and harmonious way of living. So in transpersonal psychology, it's very important to take into consideration the wisdom of our indigenous people, because those are the roots of who we are as human beings. Yes, our psyche has changed and is conditioned in a very different way today, and this is why it is very relevant that we can bring the wisdom from our ancestors or from indigenous tribes and make it relevant to the present time for the modern technological psyche of the human being today. We have a much more complex psyche in the Western world than they do in indigenous tribes. Imagine only, for example, what it is like for a child to be born in the middle of the rainforest, surrounded by grandmothers, be hugged and nurtured from the moment that they are born, and then being raised and taken care by the collective society, learning from each person in the society the different skills. And compare that to what we have today in our Western world. A child that is probably born under a schedule because the doctor has to go on holidays, under a C-section in a surgery room, and where the child is probably going to be put into a box for the mother to rest, because she has to wake up after the general anesthesia and then after a few hours, if not in some cases days, the mother doesn't even get to see the child. So imagine the conditioning that imprints in us. That's a completely different way of being and living. Our psyches have all the conditioning of the institutionalized religion, the institutionalized politics, economical system. We're at the mercy of capitalism and globalization. We're a technological industrial society. So the way our minds is structured to understand the world and perceive is completely different to those people who are living still in harmony with nature, in the rainforest, in the mountains, in the jungle. And somehow in the transpersonal vision we're trying to bring together all the different approaches, as I said, and particularly the wisdom of our ancestors, and make it relevant to our psyche and our mind today. We cannot regress to live back in the way that people lived thousands of years ago. We have actually destroyed the environment so much that it wouldn't be possible for us to do it. But what we can do is, by learning the way of our ancestors, we can certainly make it relevant today and find a way in our society, in our modern industrial society, to live in harmony and to shift the perception of living from the earth as living with the earth. So as opposed to being a virus to the planet, being a helper to the planet, being part of the ecosystem of life, as opposed to being the ones who is depleting all the resources from the earth.